Welcome to the Dark Underbelly, the case of Heather Reyes. This is the final interview of this series and the culmination of a shocking story of an out-of-control, toxic predator in a home with 3 young boys with out-of-control behavior of sexual molestation and physical assault. But there was one person that could have corrected it. A man, a father, could have corrected the behavior.
She knew I would be upset and we'd talk about it, but she would never confess anything or she would just apologize.
But time and time again, over years, this father overlooked a predator within his own home, a cheater, a liar, a deceiver, a manipulator, and ultimately now a prisoner. What you will see in the father is a pathetic, feckless loser. It will no doubt make you lose respect for humanity itself by seeing someone like him that is supposed to protect his children, and he not only didn't protect them, leaving them exposed, leaving them hurt, leaving them devastated, but time and time again, he lied, he covered up, he protected, he shielded the woman in his life that was destroying him. But it wasn't just destroying him. Heather Reyes tried to destroy his 3 children as well. This interview covers his story, his opinion, his perspective. This is the Dark Underbelly, the case of Heather Reyes.
Because that's where most of my work is actually done. I actually worked with the ex, and we both work for the same developer. She's the property manager on the actual properties that he owns. So not only do I have to see her at home, I also have to work with her professionally.
Okay.
And the developer knows that we're separated right now, but he knows that we've always kept it professional. So he's really said, like, you know, I want to keep both of you guys on as much as I can without, you know, causing any disturbance.
Okay. Wow, headaches everywhere.
Yeah, it's been very stressful. I got to be honest.
I bet.
I'm trying to to keep it all together right now, and I've always been the glue that's kind of kept it together anyway. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for meeting with me, like I said. And you and Heather, how long have you and Heather been together?
17 years.
All right. And how did you meet her?
I met her through the property management and church.
Okay.
I actually met her at church first, and then I started working for her boss.
Okay. So you guys originally met at church, and then you ended up working together.
Yeah, we ended up working together. I was a general contractor. I came to see some of her work, and it was pretty much a tall tale from there.
Okay. So, let's see. I understand that you guys were having some marital problems recently.
Oh, yeah.
When did that start?
Well, basically, gosh, where do I start with all this? It's been ongoing the whole marriage, really.
Okay.
Basically, we started out with, she kind of basically started out telling me that, she had some lunches with some guys, and basically was kind of like feeling bad about that. She kind of confessed that to me before we even got married. Okay, and then I said, don't worry about that, we'll get through that.
Okay.
And so after that, we got married, and then throughout the whole process, there has just been so much that I've held in and tried to hold together, and just deceit after deceit after deceit, and trying time after trying time.
When you say throughout the process, you talking about throughout your marriage?
Throughout the whole marriage.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been the full 17 years. I basically held together this thing.
So I'm understanding there were some complications of the marriage?
Yeah, well, what it was is in the beginning, before we ever even got together, she told me things, kind of confessed to me things about maybe abuse that she had experienced with family members.
What kind of abuse?
She basically had her grandfather had sexually abused her. Okay, and during the process of being a single girl, she had a girl, Crystal, that she ended up living with, and they did a lot of groupies type things with the concerts and everything, and she had a lot of different partners, and in that time, she basically ended up having several abortions, and she came with a lot of hurts.
Okay.
You know, so during that process, I understood what she was saying, but I didn't understand her nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't during the process that I would see things about her nature that, you know, you kind of see with your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
but you kind of like, nah, that really didn't happen, but your gut instincts was saying, yeah, that just did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And as we went through, like, probably the first 5 to 7 years of marriage,
Mm-hmm.
there was a continuity that was good, and then I started to see some behaviors where I first met my first deception of her.
What behaviors?
And it was just promiscuous behavior. When she would drink alcohol, she would get very promiscuous. She would flirt with other men, and then it got to the point where I actually would walk into places, and she would be walking out of a place, and I'd be like, what were you doing in there? And she would be like, oh, nothing, and she wouldn't remember the next day, and she knew I would be upset, and we'd talk about it, but she would never confess anything, or she would just apologize for, you know, not really holding up to what she was going to tell me or not tell me. She wouldn't tell me anything, you know?
Okay.
And so it was like one of those things where I had like this tale of like all these times where like we would be at places and I would go into the place, and once she started drinking, I would be like, oh, here goes my babysitting shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to go in through like being able to socialize with people into like this full-fledged babysitting job of, what are you doing, where are you going, why are you over here, what are you doing over there, and then people kind of saying stuff to me about what she was doing over there, and I'm like, nah, for real?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, kind of being embarrassed and waking up the next day and having her look at me and say, what did I do last night?
Okay.
And I would go, she would say something like, you look upset, what's wrong, what did I do? And so then I would tell her, and then she would either go, and I don't even know if this is truth or lie, whether or not she would literally go back to these people that were in the gathering or whatever to question them as to whether or not her behavior was really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would come back to me and basically discredit what I would be saying to her. Okay, so that kind of went on and off for us.
So is this just alcohol she's using or something different?
No, it's always been alcohol, you know, and basically what happened is, you know, at one point in time we had a couple that were our friends, and one night he's the barber of our children, he's cutting our hair, she's feeding them beer, she's having beer, and we're out there in a gathering, and next thing you know, they walk out together alone, and then they come back in, and I just, one of those feelings again, you know, and next thing you know, that night, she passes out, and her phone starts ringing, and I pick it up, and I look into it, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And there was just a lot of inappropriate interaction between her and himself, talking about him wanting to get with her, and that it would be good, and all this stuff, and that was like my first time that I ever was able to have proof that deceit was happening in my relationship, and I confronted her with it. I even went as far as to even call the man up and like threaten him, and I was really, really mad, and I was really upset because I was deceived, you know, and not so long after that family literally moved out of town. They went to Ohio.
Okay. So if I were to sum it all up, it sounds like that there was some infidelities on her part and some alcohol abuse. Is that about right?
Yeah, there's always been that, yeah. And see, what happened is there's a tail in between that, okay? We got pregnant with our first daughter, born to us with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, okay? On the earth with us for 3 months, okay? During that time, I was there, I supported her, but when Sarah died, Heather went through a very traumatic experience.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that Heather's mom would tell her when she was growing up was, "I wish you were never born."
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Which was something that she would bring up in conversation when we would go to visit them there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so through this abuse and through that, and, wishing you were never born, there was a time that, and this is something that, wow, I don't even know that I even want to say, but I know I need to say it because I think it's key. And there was a time in which we were at a restaurant in Tampa, and she was pregnant with the baby,
Mm-hmm.
and she literally told me at the dinner table, "I wish she was never born, our baby,"
Mm-hmm.
because she was mad at me. And I don't know at that point where she was at in the stages of her life, but she was saying that, and it wasn't so long after that that this happened, and here we were holding our daughter for the last time.
Yeah.
And it was something that, I'm a godly man, so I prayed to God during that time, and He revealed to me while we were going to the cemetery
Mm-hmm.
that we were good and faithful stewards, and that He was gonna allow us to have double for our trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I reached over to her as we're driving through the threshold of the cemetery, and I said, "Sweetheart, I don't know what this means, but all I can translate it to mean is that God just spoke to me in my heart and said that because we've been faithful stewards,"
Mm-hmm.
and I think at the time He was just letting me know because of my covering
Mm-hmm.
of how faithful I was up to that point, because I don't know what she was, that He was going to give me double for my trouble. And 2 years to that date, we conceived again, and we had twins.
Okay.
And so when I went to the midwife's meeting right before we left out of town to go visit the in-laws,
Mm-hmm.
I told the midwife, I said, "Now you make sure that when you run that thing over her belly that you make sure you catch both of them."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so during that time, she does that. She opens up her mouth. She says, "I can't believe, how did you know?"
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of dropped to my knees and I praised God in that moment. But to say that the time that Sarah passed away
Mm-hmm.
to the time that we conceived again, Heather went through a time that she said that she felt like she died inside.
Okay.
Okay, and she told me that recently.
Okay.
I didn't know it at the time. She even said that I didn't support her, but I don't see where I didn't support her.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say that during that time, she really took on the drinking to a whole nother level.
And what's the years here between
Well,
Sarah and the twins?
Ooh, Sarah, you got me because I got so many kids that it's hard for me to remember all these dates. But Sarah was January 2000. I'd have to call you back with them.
That's okay. I asked you earlier about your business. You have
Yes.
your own construction business, right?
Yes, I own my own construction business.
And do you have people that work for you?
Yes, I do have people that work for me. It's mostly been a family affair. It's always been me, my brother, and I've taken on other employees, but it's always been kind of like
What
a
is your
smaller
normal
type
work
business.
schedule?
Oh, I work crazy hours. Normally, I would work from like anywhere between 8 and 9 in the morning till sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes, but sometimes I would have to do the night shifts because with the doctors and some of the attorneys and the business people, they need me to be there at night so that they can function in the day. So I'd have to do kind of like a ninja type.
So sometimes
setup.
there would be night building where you'd be working all night.
I worked a lot of nights. During the seasons in which this stuff was going on, yes, I worked a lot of nights. And so I would come home to a lot of disruption. There was a lot of times that I would get home, she was inebriated, and she would tell me about things that the kids were doing to her, and then she would basically belittle me and tell me that I was no good for nothing because I couldn't reprimand them, so she would make me kind of angry and make me go in there and rage on them for things that were going on between them. And
so you would come home, she'd be intoxicated, she would tell you that the kids were misbehaving, or something else?
She would tell me that the kids were either misbehaving or talking back to her,
Okay.
Things that, that kids would do,
Sure.
And of course, with her being there was a lot of times that they couldn't, and I couldn't ever figure out why. And I'd have moments where I'd walk in the room, and I'd be like, what's going on in here? Why was the door locked?
What do you mean?
Like I would come in, like I would walk to knock on the door, and she's in there with them, and I open it, I'm like, why is this door locked? Open up.
Mm-hmm.
And then they open up, and I'm like, I'm feeling weird about what's going on, I'm like, what the heck's going on here?
Is this like a kid's bedroom you're talking about, or
Yeah.
the front door of the house?
The kid's bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there'd be times where the kid's bedroom would be locked.
Yeah, and I go, why is this door locked? And then, oh, nothing. And then, I would be like, that's weird. Why would the door be locked,
And she would be in there with one of the kids, or both? I'm confused.
She would be there with one of them, yeah.
Mhm.
She would be in there with one of them, And it was just like, there was times that I saw things, again, that I was just like, we would go to places, and like I said, she would walk out of rooms, and there would be a guy, and I'm like, what were you doing in there with them?
Mm-hmm.
And she'd be like, oh, nothing, and it's like, okay. And she would pass out, I'd have to carry her home.
Mm-hmm.
She'd be like totally passed out, and I'm like, and I'm trying to tell her, why are you doing this? You're embarrassing us. Why do you keep doing this? Why don't we get help?
Yeah.
I always asked her, I said, why can't we just get help for this? She would apologize, she'd like give me a half sorry, and even tonight, man, I was just telling her, I was just like, because all these years I've kind of like been like the person that's kind of held it in and just tried to figure out a way to bridge a gap to where she would come to me with something that we could, because I wasn't stupid. It wasn't like I didn't see it, but I couldn't prove it.
Okay.
I couldn't prove what was going on because she was really good at hiding it.
Okay, we'll get to tonight in a second. So tell me, how did the kids get along with her? How did they get along with her aside from the occasional misbehaving and talking back as everybody was growing up in the house? What was the normal day-to-day?
Well, you got to understand that every day-to-day, for the most part, was good. With three teens or three boys in the house, there's always a little bit of contention because one or the other would be acting up. But as far as an overall,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was good.
Okay.
It was never got along.
Overall good except for conflict.
Have a filter.
Uh-huh.
So he used to just kind of tell her what he felt like. And it wasn't until he got older in his, kind of like in his teens,
Mm-hmm.
12 and in his teens is when he really started to, like, you could really start to see just how they really didn't get along. And a lot of the contention that she would bring to me as far as arguments and stuff would be, and then she would make me kind of really be in a position where she's like, you're a pussy, you're not less of a man, and all you gotta do is just straighten these kids out, they're treating me this way, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, but look at you right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can't even, how can I correct them when you're like this,
Mm-hmm.
And it was because it got to the point where she didn't know that I knew, but she was hiding alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was places that I'd find it in the house, and like even sometimes, this was one thing that she hated about me, but I'm very discerning. I have a big discernment for things that are always going on. I sometimes say it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, but I can go into a place and I can kind of discern what's going on in a place. And so I would always walk up to her and I'd always study her right away. And I would give her a kiss and I'd smell. And that gave me basically an idea of where she was at.
Mm-hmm.
And if I smelled the amount of alcohol in her breath, then I knew what was going on. And she'd be like, why are you smelling me? And she would get on the muscle about that.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's just who I am, And I wouldn't say anything about it. But I would discern that, I would try to see, like, why you keep doing this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would even have moments in our seasons where I'd be like, you're going too far with this. You need to slow down. And I really wouldn't tell her to stop, because I knew stop would mean a big fight.
Yeah.
So I would be like, listen, you just need to slow down a little bit because you're getting a little out of hand with this.
Okay.
And then she would say, okay, and then it would go by a week or so, and then I would notice sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes a month, where the patterns would kind of slow down,
Mm-hmm.
and then it would accelerate again.
So I'm noticing a lot of alcohol use is what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah, alcohol use was a big part of it. Through the process.
When did you learn about what happened with her and the kids?
That just recently, because like at this point, she left me about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
She left me. Like she basically, I came to the point where I was coming home from church. I played percussion. Okay, and I come home from church, and I'm like really excited about something that we did that night. And I come home and I notice she's all drunk. She's on the phone with her girlfriend, and that she's talking about getting all these tattoos and all this stuff. And she knows I don't like tattoos.
Yeah.
So I'm like, listen, you need to stop talking about all this gibberish. And she got me so rubbed the wrong way that night that I got to the point where I got brave enough to tell her. I said, listen, I can no longer cohabit with you.
Okay.
In the behavior that you're experiencing right now. I said, I'm experiencing you being drunk all the time, and I don't want to talk to you like this anymore. You sober up, and we'll talk when you sober up. I said, because I'm tired of all this gibberish. In fact, I said, I want you to quit.
Okay.
I want you to quit drinking because this is your problem, and we're never going to get to a better place until you stop drinking. And she looked at me and said, oh, you think so, huh? And it wasn't maybe that week.
Yeah.
I found out that I was driving to come see a job over here in town, and something told me, go to the bank. You never look at the personal account to see what's going on with the money. Go look at the personal account. And I kind of looked up to the heavens and said, God, please don't let me see anything. There's so much that hasn't been true in this relationship. Please don't let me see anything else. I go to the bank and I find out that all the codes and everything that I had for the banks were no good. They had all been changed.
Okay.
But because I was on the bank account, the bank lady felt that she had to, of course I had the right to see what's in the bank account.
Right.
So I go in there and I start looking and I find out she's got credit cards in her name, and she's basically hiding money behind my back. She's been doing like Botox and all this stuff, and I'm like, who are you doing this for? Because it ain't for me. You're denying me. She's denying me the privilege of a man to have sex in my home, and yet she's behind my back.
So how long have you guys not been being sexual?
Well, it was on and off, it was on and off, and we hadn't been sexual now for 5 months now because she left and she went on, and I was just like, I kept asking her, that day I left the bank and I was very disappointed and feeling really defeated, and we had lunch that day because we were going to go to Chili's, so I came up and I had a picture of it on my phone as to, what she did, in the bank account. And she said, you look upset. What's wrong with you? And I said, this isn't really a good place to talk about it. Let's just wait till we get home. And she's like, no, I want to talk about it now. And I was like, really, you don't? And she goes, no, let's talk about it now. You can't just leave me like that. And I said, okay. And so I gave her the picture and I said, I got one more question. I said, is there anything real in our life? Is there anything real?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she goes, I did that to bless people. And I'm like, wait a minute, you got into credit card debt to bless people? I said, that doesn't make any sense. And she goes, well, if you don't like it, why don't you just pack your shit and get the fuck out the house?
Okay.
And I'm like, what? I said, you better tread lightly. I said, I don't appreciate you saying that to me. And I go, you better watch what you're saying. She goes, no, if you think that this is this way, then go home, pack your shit, get out.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, that's fine. So I walked out right there, and I literally went and packed my clothes, and I called my mother up, and I said, I'm coming to stay the night.
Okay.
Well, I spent the night restlessly. Oh, gosh, it was like a nightmare. I get up the next morning, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I leaving? I've worked my ass off all these years to build this house. I said, I pay for everything. I'm going to leave the house. I said, that's crazy. I'm going to go back. I said, in fact, I'm going to go see if I can't reconcile with this woman. And once and for all, get down to the bottom of where we can really get some help. So the first thing I do is I pack all my stuff. I get back to the house, and when you know it, I walk in the door, and she's packing. First, we had a refrigerator in the laundry room that she used to always pack all her drinks in. Okay? Keeping in mind, the day I left to go to choir practice that day, I counted the beers in the refrigerator.
Mhm.
There was 13 beers.
Mhm.
When I got back an hour and a half later, there was
Mhm.
only 5 beers left in the refrigerator,
Okay.
leading me to understand how many drinks she had had in such a short time.
Okay.
Okay, so then when I got there that day that I left and came back, I walk in the door and she's packing 24-pack of beer in the refrigerator, and I'm like, and she's like, she looks right at me with this evil stare, and she goes, "What the hell are you doing back here?" And it just set me off. And I said, "You know what I'm doing back here? I was coming to reconcile, but you know what I'm coming back here to let you know? I'm coming back here to let you know that you need to find another room in this house to live in, because you are no longer living in my room. That is my bedroom, and now you need to find somewhere else in another part of the house to live in, because I'm done." I said, "I will not tolerate this form of behavior from you any longer."
So is that when she moved out?
That's when she goes out and she says, "I'm out of here and I'm leaving." And so I go out and I told her, "No, you don't need to leave. We need to talk about this. We need to find out and get down to the bottom of why you keep behaving like this." And I stood in front of the vehicle and she's like, "Get out of the way." And I was like, "No, we need to talk." So she tries running me over with the vehicle.
Okay.
And I'm like, "Really? You're going to try and run me over?" And so I laid down on the driveway. I mean, I've never done anything like this in my life. I was just like, I didn't know what else to do.
Uh-huh.
So I laid down in the driveway and I was like, "Just run me over and take me out of my misery. I'm so tired of you doing this to me."
Yeah.
And she goes, "You better get out of my way." And I said, "No, I'm not getting out of your way. We need to get down to fixing this. When are you going to want to fix this?" She calls the cops on me.
Uh-huh.
So here I am. I'm like, "You're not going anywhere." I went as far as to even reach around and try to take the air out of the tires.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, "You're not going anywhere. We got to sit down and talk about this."
Yeah.
So the cop shows up, obviously, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Listen, officer," I said, "you don't understand what I've been dealing with today with this woman and what I've been dealing with all my life with this woman. I just really just want to talk to her." And so they tell her and tell me that I can't hold her against her will. And I'm like, "All right, I'm not trying to hold her against her will. I'm just basically wanting to get down to the bottom of this." So she ends up leaving, calls my brother, and comes back, pulls her stuff out, and leaves.
Okay. So then she leaves,
Yes.
and
She's gone until about 3 weeks ago. She calls me up for lunch, and she tells me, she's been lying to me the whole time, telling me that the place that she's staying, that she's out-welcomed her stay, but the reality is I know the couple that she was staying with. The couple's mom owns the house, and they're living in Georgia.
uh-huh.
And so she's living in the house with them, and she's living with the kids. She took the kids and went to move at this place.
Uh-huh.
And she's living there, and she keeps telling me that the lady Nellie is telling her that she's going to be moving in back again and bringing people over, and she doesn't feel comfortable anymore, and she needs to find a place to live.
Uh-huh.
And she's trying to get me to move out of the house during this whole time,
Yeah.
to get me to move out so that she can move in with the kids. And I'm like, "Listen, it's not fair that after all these years I spent laying my life down for this house,
Mm-hmm.
that you would honestly want to leave me without giving me a reason, without giving me a chance to reconcile with you
Mm-hmm.
or anything, and you're asking me just to leave and not come back and just leave you here with the kids." I said, "That's not fair.
Okay.
It's not right." And so here she is calling me right now.
Okay.
And so I said, "It's just not right." I said, "It's not fair, and to be honest with you, I really feel that if we're going to separate, then this house is going to go up on the market, we're going to sell it, we're going to split the money, and you're going to find a place for you to stay, and I'm going to find a place for me to stay, and I want 50-50 of the children. I want 50-50, custody of the children." And she said, "Over my dead body, you'll never have 50-50. And she went off on me, and I was just like, okay, whatever. So here she is inviting me to lunch 3 weeks ago, and basically tells me that she's out-welcomed her stay, and she just doesn't feel like she should be there anymore, and she's kind of calling me as a courtesy to see what I feel about her moving back in the house. But at this point, I've already moved the boys back in. They've all come from like all different places. As soon as they found out that she left me,
Mm-hmm.
they came back to me, and they were just like, "Dad, we want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong, that," yeah, there she is blowing up my phone. And I go, "Oh, they go, we want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong, that you've always kept it real with us, and we love you, and we just want to help you during this time right now. And so, like, I'm like, I've gone from literally weighing almost 175 pounds to losing all my weight down to almost 140. Okay, I've lost like 35 pounds in like 2 months. I'm feeling depressed. I'm like, I can't sleep. I can't function at work. And I'm wondering, why did she leave me? Like, I just don't understand why she left me just for that and this. And I'm like wondering what all this is going on. So fast forward to about, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I go out to the lake. And we're coming back from the lake, and I'm trying to enjoy my time. I'm trying to, heal with my children. I'm trying to heal with them, because we've had a lot of contention with her in the house.
When you say a couple weeks ago, was this in July, or was this, I use things, is this before or after 4th of July? Maybe you have it in your calendar, but.
All right, let me see. I don't even have a pinpointed time. It was probably right at the end of June, beginning of July.
Okay.
We're at the lake.
Okay.
End of June, beginning of July. July 4th. Wait a minute. July 4th. By that time, she had already. Gosh, I want to say it was just at the end of June then.
Okay. So you're out at the lake.
Because what's the date now?
Today's the 19th.
Yeah, the 19th. So it has to be at least a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Somewhere in there, from the lake, and I'm like telling him, I'm like so depressed. I'm telling him, and I'm crying, and I'm going, I don't understand why she left me. I mean, I've always been such a good man, and I've laid my life down for you guys, and I've always been about my family, and I've been a good man. Why? And he goes, oh man, I'm just so sick and tired of this already. I'm so sick and tired. You really want to know what your wife is about? I can't see you suffer like this anymore, Dad. He goes, you need to know. And I go, what do I need to know? And then he starts to explain to me the things. Starts to tell me that she's been promiscuous and molested them. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, who and what and where? And he goes, well, I don't know the story on everybody else, but then he tells me his. Okay. He tells me about what happened with him and how
he says he doesn't know everyone else's story, but what was his story?
Well, basically, he told me that he had several occasions with her where she would come and lay down next to him and then give him a hug to go to sleep or something, and the next thing you know, she's she's rubbing her butt on him, or she would take his hands and put it on her private, and I'm like, what? And so now, and he's like, well, and you're going to need to call my brothers about this if you don't believe me, because this is what's been going on, and you just need to understand that you deserve better than this, Dad. This woman she's been so harmful to all of us, the whole family. You don't know how long this has been going on. And like, I didn't get the full story at that point. At that point, I'm just like, all right, whatever. And I'm like, tonight, and he goes, well, I'm doing this, and I might be coming over. And I said, well, I need you to come over. And so that night, I confront him, and he's like deer in headlights. He's just like, whoa, wait a minute. And it was just kind of like one of those deals where he was just like, all right, well, just so you know, this is what happened. And he kind of gave me just like this really kind of like oversight story of how she would, while they were watching TV, she would, be wrestling with them, or she would be, giving them, and next thing you know, she'd be touching them, and then I'm like, what?
Did she touch them?
In their private.
Okay.
Obviously.
So touching his private, or?
Yeah, touching his private, yeah. And then that they would wrestle, and then next thing you know, it was just like really awkward, and then she would, come back the next day and apologize and tell them that, later on he came back to me again another time and told me, and I go, so why didn't y'all, because I asked him, I said, why didn't y'all say anything to me during this whole time? I'm like, how long did this go on for? And as the story developed, I found out a little bit more and more. It was kind of like they were ashamed and scared all at the same time, because they were like, well, you don't understand. She would say stuff like, if Dad finds out about us, he'll kill us both. And they already knew that I was a man of, discipline and character, and, I was very stern in the way I conducted myself. So, I think she was setting me up a lot of times when she would allow me to come home and then make me kind of get upset at them and go in the room and rage about their behavior to kind of solidify, as I'm thinking about this now, kind of solidifying what she was doing in the other end by saying, hey, if you tell Dad this, we're gonna die. He's gonna kill us, So she planted fear in them by doing that to where they wouldn't talk to me. In fact, there was times that I was just like, I felt so disconnected from my children, like she had the upper hand on all this, like she always controlled everything. And I just couldn't understand why. I couldn't understand why my kids wouldn't bridge across the table and talk to me. And so I asked them all these things, and they were just like, between the shame and just being scared, and I was just like, really?
Okay.
And I was really kind of like taken back by it, I was just like, wow.
That there was wrestling, that there was touching of his private parts by her, and that he felt awkward and then ashamed also. Is there anything else that he talked to you about?
She would just mess with him. I mean, he told me that she would just mess with him when I wasn't around, when I was at work, when I was, maybe sleeping in the other room, all these things, actually.
So I understand, were these kids separate when they were making the disclosure, or were they both sitting together?
No, none of these times that I ever talked to them were they ever together.
Right.
Yeah, no, I always pulled them to the side by myself and kind of, like, each time I would get them alone, I would ask more questions, like, hey, man, like, what else happened? I mean, really, you've told me this, but, I mean, how much more took place?
So then who did you talk to?
And then I finally talked, keeping in mind that when I finally told them, listen, there might become a time where we might have to come out with this, and they were just, like, so full of shame that they were like, no, I could never say nothing. He felt like when DCF came to the house the first time for the abuse that had taken place, he felt like he was, not listened to. So he said, you think I want to go through that embarrassment again to where I tell the truth and I'm betrayed as a liar? I never want to go through that again. So many things that he told me, but he told me that he basically, she basically touched him. She put her hands on her private. They actually had sexual intercourse. She basically led him back behind the trailer, and he said there was another time, but that it was so quick that he wouldn't, like it was in and out.
When was the time behind the trailer? What did they do then?
He said that she invited him to the back there to help her with something, and next thing you know, he pulled her in. She pulled him in, and basically they had sexual intercourse at that moment. And he said that he was a little intoxicated, and so was she, and so it was one of those things. And I kind of asked him, what happened after that, and he said it was really weird because then she tried to like mother him the next day, and he was just like really mad, and after that, he ran away, and I didn't even understand why all that stuff was going on. All this weird stuff would always happen when she was there, and then when I would get there, things would normalize a little bit. So it was like all these dysfunctional things that kept happening, and I couldn't pinpoint what the dysfunction was. Now that I look back in hindsight,
so
of all the things that were said.
She touched him and that they had sexual intercourse, then you described the trailer thing to you, and then what else? Did he talk about anything else?
He talked about the dentist on the way to the dentist's office. She would pull his hands onto her private spots. That every time that I wasn't around, she would try him, and she would come in and try to come on to him. And there was a time that he was soccer, and I couldn't understand. I kept looking at him, and I was like, man, there's something wrong with you, boy. And he couldn't score goals, which that was something. He was one of the most talented kids we had in the house. He out of all the boys, we saw him like going the furthest. He was the brightest kid in the house, and he didn't even graduate high school. I mean, he literally his whole demeanor and his whole life just went down this shithole. It was just like, what in the world is going on with this kid? And he literally ran away one time from the house and basically didn't want to come back home, and I didn't understand why he didn't want to come back home. He had the finest of everything. We bought him the nicest of clothes. We raised him up in ammunition of the Christian life, and I mean, I just can't believe all this time we were in that atmosphere and this was going on, and I was just like, what in the world?
Okay.
I just don't get it.
We haven't talked about?
He just said that there was so many times that he told me that in the laundry room one day, she cornered him after a soccer game and gave him a blowjob. And at first, when we first talked about it, I said, well, what happened in the laundry room? And he was just like, well, she kind of cornered me and I pushed her away. And then he actually, after this meeting with you guys, he actually, I told him, I said, listen, I want you to understand that there's nothing for you to be ashamed of. I said, you need to understand that you weren't the adult. You were a curious child, and you were victimized by this situation, and you need to be brave enough to speak the truth of whatever it is that happened to you. I said, he started having heart troubles, like literally chest pains and attacks and panic attacks, and we're trying to figure out where all these panic attacks are, and she was the only one that seemed to be able to calm him down every time.
When did he start having panic attacks?
After the first time he ran away.
Okay. And when did he first run away again?
That's when he was in Legacy. That was the time that he said that most of the biggest part of this damage happened.
I mean, how old was he when this was happening?
16.
So when he was 16 years old,
Yeah.
he started having panic attacks.
And he was basically going through these panic attacks, and like his girlfriend Allie was like, or this girl that was hanging around with him, and I don't know if they were really girlfriend and boyfriend, but this girl that was hanging out with him, Allie, and she's still here till today, but she called Heather in one day and said, he needs you. He's having these panic attacks, and she seemed to be the only one that can calm him down. And it was really strange, and I was just like, okay. And I just thought, whatever, I said, he's not having no panic attacks. I said, he's just calling for attention, I just thought it was an attention thing, But after he left, like he experienced like this crazy time where he really went to some dark areas in his life, and then when he came back, it was like I was sitting here trying to bridge back and say, son, what happened, And he wouldn't say nothing. I mean, he wouldn't say nothing. It really wasn't until she left me that the boys really gathered around me and started to say, Dad, we don't want you to suffer anymore. You've suffered long enough. Said, you know how scandalous your wife was, but here's the truth, and I was just like, wow.
Okay.
I was blown away.
Did the boys disclose to you anything else that we haven't talked about today?
I can't imagine anything else.
Okay.
All I can say is that the track history of her promiscuity in alcohol.
And then you had said to me earlier on the phone, whenever I asked you to come down here, you had said that she confronted you today about a phone call that she had. Is that right?
Yeah, she said that.
Yeah.
That she basically was sketched out by the whole thing.
Okay.
And she basically said he called me to try to sit there and act like he was calling me nonchalant, when in reality then he starts going into all these things about behaviors that were, and then she kind of flipped it and diverted it like it was all him, like he's the one that actually attacked her and cornered her. She started saying he's the one that cornered me and he's the one that confronted me, and I talked to him on the phone and I called him out on the phone, and I just think that this whole thing was I think they're conspiring against me, and then I got into a conversation with her to where I was just like, when are you going to come forth with what you've done as far as, to me as a husband? I said, I know of actual events now that I've heard from other men and other people that have told me that you were scandalous and that you did these things, and I said, why won't you let me get help with you? And she basically confessed to me today that she said, you need to move on. She said, I'm not good for you. She said, I've gone too far. she said, you deserve better than me.
Okay.
You deserve better than me, and you deserve someone that will treat you better than I treated you.
I want to move back to whenever she was talking to you, and she said to you that he cornered me, and what was she talking about specifically? What was she saying other than that?
Basically, she was saying that the behaviors were coming from him, not from her.
And what behaviors? Did she say what these behaviors were?
See, she didn't go into detail about it. She said he tried to say that I came on to him and I tried to corner him, but the reality was it was his behavior. He's the one that every time I was drinking, he would try to get me to, and he would try to corner me, and she just kept like really going off on this whole cornering thing.
Okay.
And the thing is that's what all three of them said, that she would kind of corner them. She would kind of put them in a like, what the hell's going on kind of position, you know, like from 1 minute to the next, it was just like they'd be wrestling or they would be hugging, and then she would be touching on them, and they'd be like, whoa, this just went, like, what just happened? What's going on here? You know, and that's how all three of the boys in separate occasions described it to me as. And I was just like, and then just to know that and to parallel with her behavior of what it was like when we went to events and what she's done. Like, we went out for her one birthday, and right on the dance floor, she started humping her girlfriend's husband and getting crazy. Next thing you know, I'm carrying her out of City Walk, you know, and just her promiscuous behavior that she exhibited. And she even said that, she even told me today when she was talking, she goes, when I was single, I displayed a lot of promiscuous behavior. And I go, yeah, and it never stopped. It came all the way in through my marriage, and I saw it. And you think I'm stupid, but I seen it, and I just couldn't get to a place where I can confront you enough for you to want to change about it. And then she was just like, that's why you need to move on, because you're not ready for the truth. If I tell you the truth, I don't want to hurt you any more than I've already hurt you. You don't understand. I've gone too far.
Okay.
And she kept telling me that, and I was just
She
like,
didn't specify what that meant.
no, of course she's not going to. But she was telling me, I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of bad things, but that I didn't do.
And when you say that, I didn't do.
And she said, I did not get with our kids. She said that.
Referring to which kids, though?
She
Are we
said,
talking about Isaac, or are we talking about?
She said, I did not get with any of the kids. That's what she said.
Okay.
You know, and I was like, but you know, to be honest with you, knowing your behavior of how you get promiscuous, I kind of find it hard to believe.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, she lost it. I said, but wait a minute, now hold on. Are you really innocent? And she goes, yes. And I go, before the eyes of God, you promised that you didn't do any of this. So you're innocent. She goes, before the eyes of God. And I go, okay. I said, well, if you're innocent, then let me help you. If you're really innocent, then let me help you. When are you going to let me help you?
Yeah.
And she was just like, you can't help me.
Okay.
You can't. And so she went into that spiel a couple times about that, you know?
I understand. Was there anything else that you think would be helpful for me to know?
Since she's been back, she's been hiding alcohol. I got pictures of it all. You know, pictures of her hiding, and she's gone from drinking just regular beer to drinking hard liquor. She's drinking Jim Beam honey, which is a very hard liquor.
Yeah.
And I've actually witnessed to where I've gone in the room where she was hiding it in the hamper and looked at the bottle. Sunday after church, the message was even about, you know, alcoholism and everything. And it was literally a bottle that was only a quarter empty.
Yeah.
And 3/4 of the bottle was gone by the end of the day.
So some heavy alcohol use is what I'm hearing.
Very, very heavy alcohol use. And I think that, and the way I see her and the way I've known my wife all these years, you know, it breaks my heart. But I see her and her whole body and her face and the changes that have come to her in this short amount of time. show me a lot of depression. I talked to her about this note that she wrote in her office, because I have a key to the office. And so I walked into the office one day that she left, and she wrote this note that basically said, I wish I could come back, because every day since I've left, my life has been miserable. In other words, she's been really, really sad that she's had to leave. And I didn't understand why that letter was. I'm like, so if she's so sad about why she left, why wouldn't she try to bridge a way back? Because she knows I'm a good man, you know? And I asked her today, I said, is that letter from you to me? She goes, yeah, that letter was from me to you. And I go, so you've gone so far that you can't even make it back? She goes, yeah. She goes, you just really need to move on. You need to keep moving forward.
Okay.
And so she really kind of freed me today to understand that I really took the weight of all this on my shoulders this whole time. I've been like mind blown, like boom. My mind has been blown by what's been being said. I mean, I could have thought of all the people. I could have been all right with being with all these other men, you know. I think I would have been better off with that than to hear this. This is just, it's torn me. It's really, really torn me. My nephew?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And his friend came over during a family visit.
Yeah.
And he also was violated by her.
Okay. An adult now?
And he's an adult now.
Okay. All right.
And he was 16 at the time too.
Okay.
Him and his friend, brother's son, by the way.
Okay.
That is my brother's only son. And so I talked to him about...
So tell me about when did disclosure?
Disclosure right after I talked to the boys. They told me, my mom is the one that actually brought it up to me. My mom said, well, you know what, back in the day, something that, you know, that he was really disturbed by, and, you know, this is what it was. And so I called him up, and Heather has left me now, and so there's no reason for me to not know this, but I heard that you had an encounter with her when you were here not so long ago, and I need to hear from you. And he told me, he goes, yeah, Uncle, you know, she came down the hall, walked into the room where we were laying down on the bed, and it was him and his mom's boyfriend's son. They were both in the 16-year-olds. And she came into the room, and she laid down between them. And he said that she started to mess with him, which was the other boy's name, started messing with him and touching him in his private spot. And she's messing with me, and he's like, nah, man, stop messing around. So she started doing it, and she did it to both of them, and he felt so ashamed that he didn't know what to do. So they were leaving to the bus station that night, and if it wasn't for the fact, check this out, I got this discernment, I had this feeling, I'm like, what is my wife doing in the room with them? So I go and I knock on the door. Again, the door's locked, and I'm knocking on the door. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing in there? Opens up the door, and she comes walking out going, oh, nothing, you know, just hanging around with the boys. And so next thing you know, I see them come walking out, and I can see their countenance, and they look like they seen ghosts. So again, it was another time where I had this feeling that something had happened, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was because I didn't see it.
And what house and where was this at?
This is the
And what room was this that you knocked on the door?
This was it was at a time where after that they decided to go to the bus station and them off to get on the train to leave. She decides she wants to go with them that night. I had no idea what was going on. So what does she do? She sits in the middle of them in the back seat, and she starts to do it again, you know. And so if it wasn't for my sister and my brother-in-law being there, there's no telling how far it would have went.
So this is on the way to the bus station?
Now, on the way to the bus station, she's messing with him there too. And again, she's drunk.
Okay.
She's drinking. She's drunk. She's, you know, displaying these behaviors, and that's how I knew there was stuff that was going on.
A friend. He's not a family
He's
relative.
Not a family
he's like
member.
a friend.
Well, basically, he is his mother's boyfriend's son.
Okay.
So basically, not a relative,
What, a
but
step cousin?
like a step brother or a step cousin, yeah.
Step cousin to your boys. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
So I'll take that. I appreciate the help with that there. All right, well, I'll follow up on that. You've given me a lot of information today. I really appreciate you talking with me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm still have some more investigating to do, and I'll, hopefully I'll have some more answers maybe sometime next week.
Her knowing this now, I mean, there was sexual allegations on her for the kids. She came to me like losing it. She even told me today, she goes, I feel like I'm going to snap. That's what she told me.
Okay.
Because I was really like interrogating her, like, what did you do and why did you do this to, me and our marriage? But I was kind of intertwining it back and forth between the two conversations to see if I could get her to, to kind of move in a direction. So now moving forward, obviously she thinks right now that I is the one that called on her.
Okay.
Okay, she says, oh, I'm adamant now. I know that all these behaviors, and I was just like, so you didn't call him to ask him about any inappropriate behavior between us two? And I go, no. But moving forward, should I tell her I lied and that I did talk to him?
My goal here was I don't want you to be you're in the same house with her. I really don't want to make it any more difficult than it is for you. Obviously, you want to stay away from her. You don't want to make her mad because you guys are sharing a house together. You don't want conflict. She's
just not the type of person now at this point where she's at that she's going to try to do anything. Like earlier in our years when we first got together, she used to beat the shit. She was violent.
I think right now you should practice some distance from her as much as you can. Obviously, my investigation is open right now and active, so definitely avoid telling her that you talked to me. Okay?
Oh, well, of course. Yeah,
okay?
no. I would never tell that.
We'll figure out the rest of this stuff later.
Well, I'm not saying to lie, but I mean just to tell her, because I did talk to her.
Yeah, I think
I did talk to her.
When I talked tonight, if she's cornering you and stuff like that, you can say, look, I wasn't truthful. I have been asking all the boys lots of questions. And you know everything in the world. I don't think, but I still keep asking him, and you can say that if you have to, because my goal is to try to
put him on the
I don't inside. I don't want her to be upset with really anybody, but particularly I don't want her to be mad with. I want to get to the truth, and you've told me today, or you've relayed to me today, that she may be apprehensive of telling all of the truth. That's what I'm kind of understanding some of the things.
Yeah.
So my goal in this investigation will be to get to the truth. And in doing that, I want to make it so that, she is comfortable so that we can get to the root of the issue, okay?
Yeah, because that's where the most damage was done.
Okay.
Gosh, man.
Well, I'll walk you outside. I really appreciate you meeting with me today.
Okay.
And I know it's going to probably be tough. She's already called you twice while we were in here.
Yes. Yeah, like I have to call